The city was colder than Grace imagined. Every morning the air smelled of fresh coffee and ambition, things she couldn't afford. She had left her small village with nothing but a worn suitcase, a dream, and her mother's words, "Grace, no act of kindness is ever wasted." She found a job through an agency, cleaning for the Parkers, a wealthy family living in a glass-walled home on a quiet street. Mrs. Parker barely looked at her. Mr. Parker only nodded. Their little daughter, Lily, was frail, often coughing in the hallway as she dragged her teddy bear around. Grace didn't complain. She worked hard, woke up early, and hummed hymns while scrubbing the floors. She wasn't just cleaning, she was building hope. One dish, one room, one kind smile at a time. Grace quickly learned that kindness had no audience in the Parker home. Mrs. Parker barked orders and never said thank you. Yet, Grace still smiled. When Lily spilled milk, Grace knelt down and whispered, "It's okay, sweetheart," wiping the floor before Mrs. Parker could scold her. At night, Grace used part of her small salary to buy fruits for Lily. She left them on the child's table without a note. She didn't want credit. She wanted healing. Some evenings, she would take her leftovers and walk to a nearby shelter, sharing food with homeless people on her way home. Nobody knew her name there. She just smiled, offered bread, and disappeared into the night. Soon, neighbors began to talk. They said Grace was too kind to be innocent. They whispered that she must be pretending, that no maid smiles that much unless she's plotting something. One afternoon, Mrs. Parker confronted her. "I heard you've been giving things away to strangers," she snapped. "You're not paid to play charity?" Grace lowered her head. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I only help where I can." Mrs. Parker scoffed. "If you cared about helping, you'd do your job better." Grace said nothing. She'd learned that silence often carries more grace than argument. She kept working, kept caring, and kept believing that compassion never needs approval. It happened on a stormy Friday night. The power went out. Thunder cracked the sky. Grace had just finished washing dishes when she smelled smoke. Fire. It spread quickly from the kitchen to the living room. She screamed for the Parkers, rushing upstairs as smoke filled the hallway. Lily's cries echoed through the dark. Without thinking, Grace covered her face with a wet cloth and ran into the flames. She found Lily trembling under the bed, coughing, eyes red from the smoke. Grace wrapped her in a blanket and carried her downstairs, stumbling as the heat closed in. Outside, fire trucks blazed and neighbors gathered. The house collapsed minutes later. Everyone survived because a maid refused to run away. At the hospital, Mr. Parker sat beside his sleeping daughter. His eyes were heavy with guilt. Grace lay in another ward, her hands wrapped in bandages. She had burns on her arms but smiled faintly when the doctor checked her. The next morning, a nurse brought an envelope to Mr. Parker. Inside were several receipts, small donations made every month to a children's health fund, all under Grace's name. One of those donations had helped pay for Lily's earlier treatments. Mrs. Parker broke down. All her judgments, all her pride melted in that moment. She walked into Grace's room, tears falling freely. "You saved my child," she whispered, "and I misjudged you." Grace smiled softly. "You don't owe me anything, ma'am. Kindness isn't a favor. It's a duty." Months later, after her recovery, Mr. Parker offered to sponsor Grace's education. She hesitated at first, afraid to dream, but he insisted. Grace went back to school studying social work. Years passed, and her story spread quietly across the city. The once ignored housemaid became a community counselor, known for her compassion and strength. She opened a small foundation for young women who, like her, had dreams but no platform. Her motto was simple: be kind, even when they're not watching. 10 years later, the Parkers invited her back, not as a maid, but as a guest speaker at Lily's high school graduation. When she stepped on stage, dressed elegantly but humbly, The audience fell silent. Lily introduced her as the woman who taught me what true kindness means. Grace smiled and said, "Compassion is not weakness. It's courage in disguise. You don't need to be rich to be kind. You just need to care, even when no one claps for you." The hall erupted in applause. Tears filled Mrs. Parker's eye. And for the first time, Grace realized her mother's words had come true. No act of kindness is ever wasted. True kindness doesn't wait for recognition. It blooms in silence and rewards the heart that gives without expecting in return.